Hi folks, this is Karim Raul from IT Visualizer channel. Today we will continue our lab, the DC Comics. Okay, we have been discussing in the previous video the following. Just a minute. I've been discussing in the previous video that you have enabled something in the DHCP configuration which is called DHCP filters. There is something called allow filter and deny filter. This is simply we are through this configuration in the DHCP we are allowing the workstations to get IP from the DHCP if they are in the allowed filter. If they are in the denied filter, they will not get an IP address. Okay, so this option is very useful because we can control which workstation can get IP address from our DHCP. Mainly basically we will put all of our domain computers servers in the allow filter. Okay, and if for example you have any guest coming to your production environment and you need to get to the internet, you need first to add him to the allow filter so we can be able to get IP address from your DHCP. And then we have been working with the quota. As I said before in the previous video, we have created department shares and home directory user folders, but we didn't put quota on it. So quota is basically it is a limitation for every department share and home user share. For example, we have limited the department shares from only 10 gigabyte. Okay, so this is the space that will be allocated for all of the department shares. And as for the home directory users folders, every user will have a share of his own limited to 100 megabyte. Okay, so we have done this also in the previous video, and then we will begin the main objective of our lab, which is configuring Windows deployment services combined with Microsoft deployment tool, and also plus or additionally also configuring assessment deployment kit. All of this are combined to make a deployment process which is called, or in a process called zero touch installation process. Okay, we are working with all of these four functions or four programs: the Windows deployment services and Microsoft deployment tool and assessment deployment kit. All of this we will use to deploy 53 PCs. Okay, all of them doesn't have any operating system. We need to deploy them as soon as possible in a process called zero touch installation. After this process is finished, they will have Windows installed, some additional software like Office, Google Chrome, Firefox, Classic Shell, and the PCs will be given names and they will join the domain. All of this will be done automatically in a process called zero touch installation. This will be done through the WDS and MDT and ADK. So in the previous video we have downloaded the Microsoft deployment version 8456, and we have also downloaded the ADK, which is version 1903. We need to make sure that the ADK version is typical to the Windows that we will use in our deployment. So in our scenario we will deploy on 53 PCs Windows 10 LTSC 2019 version 1903. Okay, so when you are deploying Windows 10 you need to make sure that the Windows 10 version is typical to the version of the ADK. Okay, so we have done this in the previous video. We have downloaded Microsoft deployment kit, which is 8456. We need also to make sure that the Microsoft deployment kit version is compatible with the version of the ADK. Okay, and this is by default. When the ADK, there is a newer version of ADK is released, they release the one, or they release the correspondent Microsoft deployment tool version that will work with this ADK version. Okay, so we have downloaded the Microsoft deployment kit and the ADK, and then we have installed the ADK. This is the first one we have installed, and then we installed something called ADK 1PE add-on, and then we have installed the Microsoft deployment toolkit, which is 8456, and then after installing all of them, we begin configuring something called MDT deployment share. Okay, this is a share, or this is the place where all of our scripts, okay, or where all of our zero touch installation scripts will use. Okay, so the process of zero touch installation, basically it will depend upon a bunch of scripts to automate the whole process of installation of Windows and all of the other necessary software. As I said before, all of these are done through some or a bunch of scripts. All of these scripts are in a share called deployment share, or in a folder called the deployment share, and this folder is shared. Okay, I will show you a little bit of diagram that will show you all what's the meaning of this deployment share or how we can use it. And then in the last video also we have imported an operating system. This is the system that we will use, or this is the system that we will deploy it on the 53 PCs. It's Windows 10 LTSC 2019. And then after that we have added the Microsoft Deployment Services role. Okay, and then we configured it, and then we add boot images. Okay, 64-bit and 86 or 86-bit. I will show you all what is the meaning of boot. Okay, and what is this deployment share. We will show you in a graph, and then at the end I have added both WDS and Microsoft Deployment Consoles to our custom console, so I can configure all of them in one. As I said before, the custom console, it is a way that you can add most of your frequently used consoles. For example, if you have a DNS console, a DHCP console, a WDS console, a MDT console, and you need all of them to be configured from one place, then you will create a custom console and add all of them in this custom console. I have showed you all in the previous videos how we can do a custom console. So what is the whole process, or what is the process in general? We can see here that this PC, okay, doesn't contain any operating system. It's have only a hard disk that it is online, but it's not partitioned. It's a blank hard disk, and this PC doesn't contain any operating system. So as soon as you power it on, it will begin broadcasting to see if there is any DHCP. So it will go to our second domain controller, which is DC02, and its IP is 10.0.1.21. It will see that there is a domain controller, and it will talk to the DHCP on this server on a specific port. Okay, this is not port 60. I am just assuming it's a port, but it will talk to the DHCP so it can get an IP address. Okay, so the DHCP will give it an IP address. This is the first thing, and after it gives it an IP address, the workstation, okay, will go in a mode, something called Pixie boot mode. Okay, this Pixie boot mode, this is the mode that this PC will use to connect to the Windows deployment services. Okay, so it can begin installation or the process of installing the Windows 10 LTSC. Okay, so when it goes into Pixie mode, okay, it will have some information, or it will be delivered some information from the DHCP. So the DHCP will not only give it an IP address, but it will give it after it goes in the Pixie mode or Pixie mode option, it will give the DHCP will give it some information, something called Pixie client, and the IP of the Windows deployment server, okay, which is 10.0.1.21, the same of our DC02 or our second domain controller. Okay, because the second domain controller contains two server roles, the DHCP and the Windows deployment services. Okay, so the DHCP will give this client the IP address of the Windows deployment service server or server role, and it will talk to this Windows server the Windows deployment service on another port. Okay, because both are on the same server, so for the client to differentiate between the DHCP and the Windows deployment service, it will talk to each one of them on different ports. Okay, so when the DHCP give the client, after entering the Pixie boot mode, the Windows server or Windows deployment services IP address and the boot image, the client will go and talk to the Windows deployment services, and then the Windows deployment services will initiate something called a boot image. It's something like a mini image or live Windows image, something it will use to connect to the Windows deployment share or the Windows deployment service. Okay, after that the installation process or the automation process of the Windows will begin. Okay, first of all we need to make sure, or I need to have a note that this boot image, it is on the deployment share boot. Okay, this is on the deployment share folder. Okay, so after the Windows deployment services boot, okay, and give it our Windows Live image and connect to the Microsoft deployment share, there is a task, okay. We will have a task. It's called, this is the task ID, it's Win LTSC 2019. The task name is Windows 10 deployment task. This task contains some steps or some scripts. So this task contains 2 scripts and a database and some Windows file, okay. So what we will do, this PC will go and in order, it will take an IP address from the DHCP, talking to it on port 60. It will give it an IP address, and then it will go to the PXE mode, and then after that the DHCP will give it the IP address of the Windows Server deployment services and the boot file, and then this PC will boot or will go to the Windows deployment services, okay, and then it will begin initializing something like Windows Live image, or it will initialize a boot image. This boot image, it is on a folder in the Microsoft deployment share, okay. So it will boot a Windows Live image. This Windows boot Live image will go to the Windows deployment tools, and it will begin initiating or initializing a task. It will appear on your screen, and it will begin doing some steps. First step is to automate the process of the Windows installation. It will, for example, here in our lab or in this lab, we will tell it to partition our hard disk, which is still not partitioned yet. We will make it 2 partitions, C and D, on EFI systems and MS or MBR systems. This is for new computers, okay. This is a script. It will be only this partitioning will be done only if this computer is a new computer and it doesn't have any operating system on it, and the hard disk is not partitioned yet. So after doing this process and a couple of other processes, it will finish, and then it will go to the other process of software automation script. This will install some software, as I said before, Office and all of these softwares like Office and Google Chrome and whatso. All of this also will be automated, and then it will take a name, or this PC will be given name from a database. This database will contain the name of the PC and correspondent to it the MAC address of the network adapter for this PC, okay. So it will take the name and will, so here in steps, it will automate the process of the installation of Windows and automate the process of software installation, and will take a name. All of this will be done using also the Windows 10 ISO files. So in the previous video we have copy an ISO DVD or Windows 10 ISO DVD and put it in the deployment share. So all of these scripts and name will be working on the Windows 10 ISO images, okay, using this task. So this task will contain a couple of steps to be done, okay. These steps will be done on a Windows DVD or Windows installation files. One of them is the Windows installation process automated, and then after the Windows 10 installation is finished, it will begin another process of automating the software installation for Office and whatsoever, and at the end it will give the PC a name, and after that a restart will be made, and after the restart will be made, the PC will be joined the domain, okay. So this is basically what we will do. The task will be given a task ID. This is a task, and it will be given an ID and a task name. So everything in the Microsoft deployment tool should be done through tasks, okay. So for our first task is to install Windows 10 LTSC 2019, and we will give it a couple of scripts to automate the process of Windows installation and software installation, and the PC also name will be automated. And not to forget that in the deployment share we have a copy of a Windows 10 LTSC DVD files. We have it here in this folder. So all of these steps or scripts will be done on these files, okay. So basically the Windows 10 DVD will begin initializing the installation of Windows, and then the scripts will begin applying, or the scripts will be applied on the Windows installation, okay. The first one will install the Windows automatically, and after finishing the installation of the Windows files, it will begin after that, after finishing Windows installation, will begin installing the software and what so. So I don't repeat myself, this is basically the process that we will do. This is the whole structure, or this is how the as I said before, this is how the zero touch, this is called zero touch installation, okay. So this process is called zero touch installation. Why when the PC talk to DHCP and Windows Deployment Services, it will talk on different ports. Why? Because they are on the same server. Okay, so that it need to differentiate between the DHCP and the Windows Deployment Services according to ports. Okay, so this is the process. Now we can go to the video and begin the process, or we'll begin the completion of our video. Here we will open our first domain controller. And our second domain controller also. So the first thing that we will do, that we will go to the DHCP and begin configuring these. Let me show you all. We'll begin configuring these three things we need in the DHCP configuration to configure the Pixie client and the boot server name and the boot file name, because DHCP will provide all this information to the client after giving it an IP address. So with this information it can reach the Windows Deployment Service and then begin initializing the boot image. It's something like Windows Live image, that this Windows Live image will go and connect to the Microsoft deployment share and begin initializing the task of the installation of Windows 10. And by this task we will do a lot of steps. All of these steps are done using, or it will be done after running the Windows ISO files. Okay, they will begin after that applying these scripts on it. Okay, so this boot image, it is different than the Windows ISO image. This boot image, this is a live Windows image, is only a way that the PC can communicate to the Microsoft deployment tool, or it can reach the Microsoft deployment toolkit and begin installing the real Windows, or the stable Windows, or the not to install the Windows on the PC. We can call this boot image something like USB Windows or Windows Live USB image, something like this. It's not a real Windows, or it's not installed on a PC. It's only temporary until it connects to the Windows deployment share and then begin initializing the task of the installation of the Windows or install process, which, as I said before, this deployment share has Windows files on it, ISO files. So now we can begin the process. So logging by my Active Directory domain account. This Active Directory domain account, it's as I said before, I am a member of the domain admins and the enterprise admins and the schema admins and the administrators group. So I can, this Active Directory or my Active Directory user have full rights on the domain. we can pass it real quickly because it's taking a lot of time. So we will open, just a minute. Here we will open the DHCP, and then we will begin configuring the parts that I am said before. This Pixie client, we should configure it to be Pixie client as a value. All of these configurations just to help the PC that needs operating system to be deployed on to reach the Windows deployment server or Windows deployment service. So here we can telling him the boot server host name. We are putting our IP address of our Windows deployment services, and then we will put the boot file name. This is the file that this PC will use to boot or to reach the Microsoft deployment services, and after it reaches it, it will initiate a boot image. Okay, so we will type it, it's boot. Okay, we'll type it real quickly again. It's boot mf.efi. okay, so basically with this information we are telling the client or the workstation how to communicate with the WDS. Okay, so it can begin the process of the deployment or begin the process of the automation of the deployment of Windows 10 LTSC 2019. Okay, so when you have the Pixie client and the boot server host name and the boot file name. So after that we will make an Active Directory user account, and we will call it Microsoft deployment user. This user, Active Directory user, we will use it to deploy the operating system to any PC. Okay, so when you are deploying in this, let's have a look here. When you are deploying the Windows 10 LTSC on a PC, you need to have an Active Directory user account that will deploy. Okay, because you will use the Active Directory user account to deploy the operating system, and also it will use this Active Directory user account to join the domain. Okay, because at the end we need the PC to join the domain. So this PC, it will join the domain using an Active Directory user account that have rights, okay, or have the privilege or have the right to join a workstation to the domain. Okay, so we need an Active Directory user account to install or deploy the Windows 10 operating system, and also to join the domain, to join this workstation to the domain. Okay, so here this we will use it as I said before, this user should because it will join the workstation to the domain, so need to have certain domain rights, or to have certain rights on the domain. We will give it an administrator rights, we'll see that in a moment. And also when you deploy the Windows 10 LTSC on this operating system, it also needs some rights. Okay, so to make this clear, I will make a user, okay, and I will put it here. We'll make a user called MT deploy user, and I will put this user in my IT group. I have made a group in this domain which is called DC_IT. In this group I have put all of my IT personnel, and I will put also MDT deploy server in this group, DC_IT group. And this group is a member of all of the most important Active Directory built-in groups, like domain admins, enterprise admins, schema admins, and administrators. So by putting MDT deploy Active Directory user in the DCIT group, he will take all of the rights needed to complete the process of the deployment and joining the domain. and joining the workstation to the domain. Deployment of the workstation and deployment of the operating system to the workstation, and to join the workstation to the domain after the complete installation of the system. So here I go to the DCIT, and then I will add my MDT user. This user, as I said before, by being a member of the DC_IT group, he will be a member because this DC_IT is a member of the enterprise admins, schema admins, domain admins, and administrators group. So he will take full rights, or will take the rights of all of these groups. We need this because this user should have rights to join workstations to the domain and to deploy operating systems on these workstations. And this user should have a password that should not expire, because it will be used frequently. Okay, you can, after finishing the deployment process of the 53 PCs, you can disable this account or not use it again, but during the process this user should not have a password expiry date, or should not be locked for any reason. One of them is the password expiry. Okay, so here we will continue. I think I need to pass it real quickly. Let's see why I'm doing this, and shutting it down for a certain reason. Okay, what I'm doing here, I have already just a minute. We'll open again the first domain controller. Then we'll start the second domain controller. I think we can pass it real quickly. Okay, so now we will begin our first task in the Microsoft deployment tool. As you see before here, we need to make a task so we can install Windows 10 LTSC. Okay, in the previous video I have already copied the Windows 10 LTSC ISO files in the deployment share. Okay, we have done this. We need to create a task, okay, to deploy this Windows 10 to all of the workstations, okay, to any workstation that will connect to the Microsoft deployment services. So we'll see how this will be done. So, and you will give it a name, Windows LTSC 2019. This is the ID, and the name, it will be Windows 10 LTSC deployment task. So for the deployment share to work, we need to make a task, and in this task we will configure some scripts, okay, and some things. This will be run, or it will be combined, or sorry, this task scripts will be run during the Windows 10 starting or initializing or working. Okay, so we will see that in a moment. We will see that as live, but just wait until we reach it. We can pass it real quickly because it will take some time. Okay, and then we need MDT scripts. Okay, just a minute. Okay, here as I said before, we will need, after the Windows 10 is installed, we need to install or to automate some software installations. Okay, we will automate some software installation process. So I have already prepared a couple of programs, okay, that we will use and automate their installation. First of all, I have some ready-made scripts that we will use in our MDT deployment, or we will use it through, or we use it in the Microsoft deployment kit. So I will copy it from my laptop to my virtual machine, and then I have also another folder that contains the sources of the softwares that we will automate their installation process. Okay, so here as you can see that in this we have another script that will automate some software installation or software deployment automation script. So for this script to work, we will also have in this deployment share folder not only the Windows 10 DVD files, we will also have the sources of the softwares that we need this script to automate their deployment. Okay, so I just forgot to put here some softwares. Okay, so this deployment share will contain the scripts for automation of the deployment process, the sources of the programs that we need to automate their deployment, for example the source of Windows 10 files and the source of the softwares like Adobe and Google Chrome and so on. So now we copy them to our DC02. This is the MDT script. This is some ready-made scripts or some pre-used scripts. Okay, this is some ready scripts I bought from the internet. We'll use it in our Microsoft deployment kit, and here is the source of the programs that we will, or this is a program or programs that we will use a script on it to automate its deployment. We will have Classic Shell and Google Chrome and Firefox and VLC and Adobe Reader, and also we will automate the process of Office 2016 installation. Okay, so in the deployment share folder we will have the source of the softwares. We will do that now, and you also have in the deployment share the source of the Office files 2016, and we'll do this in a couple of minutes. And before, we have already in the deployment share the Windows 10 LTSC DVD files. Okay, also in the deployment share folder. So we are preparing our environment, or are preparing our sources that we will use to deploy, because all of these scripts need to have softwares or programs to automate its process of installation. Okay. So now take care, because this user will use it to deploy Windows 10 LTSC, okay, 2019, and this user we will use it to join the workstation to the domain. Okay, and tell you password never expire, because need this user to be always online and not locked, because it will use during all the process of the deployment of the 53 PCs. Okay, so now we will go and create a task. Okay, we can make a folder. I just need to organize myself, so I make a folder under the task, and we will name it anything you need. Windows 10 LC 2019, and then in this folder we will create our first task. We'll tell him new task sequence. This is the task sequence ID. This is an ID, it's like a number or something unique, so we can, or a unique number or combination of numbers and letters, so we can identify if there is a lot of tasks, which every task will have a unique ID. Okay, this is when LTSC 2019. This is the name of the task. We will have a sequence ID, something like the ID, the identifier, or this like your passport ID or something. The task also will have an ID. We will see how this is very important when we work with the Microsoft Deployment Kit, the task sequence ID. And there, this is the task sequence name. And then Microsoft Deployment Tool has some ready-made scripts, so it's telling you, for example, which task. Just a minute here. Okay, so here the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit has some ready-made tasks. Okay, so it's telling you which task you need. Some have some default task. For example, there is something called standard client task sequence, and there is, for example, another task called capture image. Okay, there is a lot of tasks, but actually we will discuss this later. Anyway, we will use the default one, which is called standard client task sequence. Okay, and then he is telling you which operating system you need to deploy. Here we, in the previous video, have already copied the Windows 10 Enterprise LTSC 2019 files in the deployment share, and he's asking me, okay, which here we put them in the operating system. Under operating system, here we put the files of the Windows 10, or we put a copy of the Windows 10 LTSC installation files in this location, which is on the deployment share. Okay, and after that he's telling us, okay, this task it will install which system. So I'm telling him, okay, I will install the system that I have already imported to you in the operating systems folder. Okay, so I'm telling him to install Windows 10 LTSC. There is two. There is another. This is something called LTSCN. I will use LTSC, not LTSCN. And here I'm telling him, you can get back. I will not give him again. He's asking for a product key if you have a license key, but I don't have. I will not put the license key now. Well, I'll use the trial. Okay, and then he's telling me, this is the user. When you install the Windows, okay, it will create a user, something that like the local administrator account. Like, for example, I have told you before that when you install Windows for the first time, there is a user. Okay, just a minute, but let me check if this is what I'm talking about. Or this setting will be full name, and no, this is not. It will not create a user. This is telling you this is the organization information. Okay, so for example, you will see in the properties of my computer or this PC, you will see the full name and your organization name. Okay, so these are two information that will be put in the Windows. It will not create any users or something. This is some info about the organization that you are working in, and or a name or something. And the last one, it is if you want, when you open your Internet Explorer, to go to a certain page, this can be done. So I will tell him to go to the DC Comics page. We will see that in a moment. You will call DC Comics. Domain. And here I will go and get I can just pass it real quickly for you because we don't need all of this. Here I will go and put DC Comics. Here's the page. Okay, DC Comics, and then after that he is telling me the local administrator password. This is the default username that when you install Windows you will find. As I said before, when you're installing Windows for the first time, there is a default user that will be created, which is called administrator. Okay, this administrator, you should give it a password, okay, or you should not only give it a password, you should, after giving it a password, rename it from administrator to any other name, and after that you disable it completely, and you can create any other user and give it the privileges or the rights of this administrator. Okay, anyway, we will not give this administrator password now, we will do it later, because later we will disable this local administrator user completely after giving it a password, of course, and rename it. Okay, we will do this through the group policy. We will rename the user from administrator to any other thing and disable it through group policy, and we will give it a password, but we will not do this now. So we will not tell him to give it a password now. This is the default. When you install any Windows 10, any Windows server, there is by default a username which is called administrator. This administrator, it is called specifically called local administrator. This administrator has full rights on the Windows operating system, if server 2019 or Windows 10, normal Windows 10. So this is a very critical username. It needs to be renamed and disabled and giving a strong password. And after all of this, we need to give or to create a new user that have the privileges of this administrator. This is all some security best practice, because most of the hackers know that this the Windows have a default user named administrator, and most of them, or most of us, doesn't put passwords on it, and they can easily, because they know the username, they will guess the password. Okay, so to make it more difficultly on them, we will change the username to any other thing, and we will put a strong password, and we will disable this account altogether, and we will use another account that have the same privileges of this account. So we can for example configure Windows or do anything else if you are working in a worker group, or we can make a group and in our Active Directory input it in the local administrators group on the server, so we can get the rights of the local administrator as well. This is in the domain or in a worker group. Do not specify a password at this time, and then next. Here we'll give the name DC Comics users. Okay, and then after that, after finishing, we will have a task created. We can open this task and begin putting some scripts, or we'll put Windows 10 automation script and software automation script, as we have seen in the graph. Here we can go to the last task sequence, right click the task and then properties and then task sequence. Here this is all ready-made scripts. This is all of these are scripts, and they are put in steps. Okay, for example, the first script is implemented, then the second script is implemented, and so on until it reaches the end. Okay, so we need one of these scripts which is responsible for partitioning the hard disk of our workstation. We need to, when we deploy the Windows 10 LTSC 2019 on the workstation, we need during the process of installation the Windows 2 create two partitions, C and D, and create C and D, and this will be used for the EFI operating system and for the MBR operating systems. Okay, this will be done, and we will also specify how much space we need for the C and D for both of them. We will see how this will be done. It will be done through the install. I think this all are phases, or this is all our steps. Okay, so here we will go to the pre-install, and we will go to new computer only, and then format and partition, BIOS and UEFI. We will use these both of them. Okay, so here we can see that it's telling us that it will, this is by default the partition default configuration. The scripts will make a system reserved partition, and it will make it 499 megabyte, and then it will make one partition only. It will make one partition, so it will make a system reserved partition. This will be hidden, it's 499 megabyte, and then it will make the whole hard disk one partition. Okay, it will be 99 of the remaining space. For example, here this is 499 of the space. For example, if we have hard disk of 200 giga, for example, so it will take from this 200 giga 499 mega, and the 99% of the remaining of the 200 gigabyte minus the 499, it will be given to the partition C. Okay, and the 1% remaining will be for the recovery partition. Okay, so if you have a partition 200 gigabyte, take for example 1 giga to the system reserved, so we will have 199. 99 of this 199 will be one partition C. Okay, and the remaining which will be I don't know, it will be maybe less than 1 giga or something. This will be done, or it will be for the recovery partition. Okay, let's give it in another way, or let me show you how this is all what I mean here. For example, if we have a calculator, here we have 200 gigabyte. Okay, 200, we will minus from it, let's not see 400, for example, we will take from it 10, for example. Okay, so here we will have what? We will have 190 remaining. 99% of this 190 will be created as C partition. So let's 190 by 99. Okay, then divided 100, so we'll have 188.1 gigabyte. Okay, this is the C partition, will be 188.1. okay, so what about the remaining? We have minus 190, so we have 1 giga 1.9. this is the remaining of the hard disk, which will be for the recovery partition, and it's saying 100% of it, so the total of the remaining will be taken as a recovery partition. Okay, so this is how the partitioning are done. You are partitioning them by percentage. So first we will take a partition, or we will take a space to be for the system reserved partition. This is used when there is something in the Windows, or there is a problem with the Windows. You can go to this partition and fix the problems. Basically, this is a copy of the most important Windows files. It is on a partition, and this partition is hidden. If there is a problem with the Windows, we will go and see this partition, okay, and fix, or if you need to copy files or to fix files, it will fix them or fix the Windows from this partition, or from the files contained in this partition. Okay, this is hidden, and this is about, as I said before, 499 megabyte. Okay, so you have 200 gigabyte. You will take 99% of them, of this 200 gigabyte, to be partition C, and the 1% remaining, you will take it 100% of it to be a recovery partition. We will see that when we put a hard disk, and we'll see how this will be calculated. For example, I will give it a 200 gigabyte. We will see after the installation is finished the spaces of every one of them. Okay, but actually I will not use this default configuration. I need, for example, not to have a recovery partition. I need to have two partitions. I will have C and D, C for the Windows and D for my data, and the Windows will have 50% of my hard disk. Okay, 50%, and the remaining 50% we will take it, all of the remaining 50%, 100% of them, for the second partition, which will be for the data volume. Okay, so we'll have Windows partition volume and data volume. Okay, don't be in a hurry. We will see that when we deploy the operating system. We will see how this will be done. So we have two things. So now we will continue. I think I have this opened. Okay, so now we will begin changing this. I need, as I said before, I need to have not only one partition, I need to have two partitions. I think I have done this before. I shall show you all how this is done. So let's go back. Okay, we'll go here to the properties. Here I'm telling him to take only 50%, and the remaining 50% we will take 100% of it. Okay, 100% of the 50%. Okay, so this will be a primary partition and NTFS. It will be formatted as NTFS. So the second one, we will not make it a partition type recovery, we'll make it a primary, another primary. Okay, and just a moment here. So basically what I'm telling him, that we need to have two partitions. The first partition, you will take 50% of the hard disk, okay, and make it as a partition C, and the remaining 50% you will take 100% of it and make it as the D, or the second volume, or the second partition. Here we are taking 100% at its primary, and we name it data. Okay, and we name the partition name as data, and it will be formatted as NTFS. Here you can, if you don't want to work with percentages, you can specify a size here. Okay, you can, for example, tell him for the Windows we need to give it a specific size. You can use the other option to specify a size. Okay, this is for the second volume or the second partition and the first partition, or for the operating system and for the data partition system. This can be done using the specific size. You can if you don't want to use size, you can, or if you don't want to use percentage, you can use a specific size. This can be done. Okay, so this is in your hands. I am working with percentage. Okay. So now we have two. This is for the BIOS or for the MBR boot systems, and the other is for the UFI boot systems. Okay, we will make it also as 50%, and the other one will be for 100%, but we will change it to a primary partition. Okay, so both are, we have two primary partitions. Okay, so when we will format or partition the hard disk, we will have two primary partitions, one for the system and the other for the data, and both will have NTFS. The first will be 50% of the hard disk, and the other one will be the remaining 50%. Okay, so now we have configured this script, okay, to automate the process of the partitioning of the workstation hard disk. This is the first step. We will do a lot of changes or a lot of configuration. Okay, but this is the first thing to do, or the first thing that we will discuss in this video. Also, I have showed this you all in the graph. So, as I said before, after any change in the Microsoft deployment tool, you need to right click and tell him to update deployment share, and then to choose the optimize the boot image and updating boot image updating process. This will be done. Okay, and after doing that, we will do another thing, but as I said before, in the first time you need to right click and update, and then make completely regenerate the boot images. This is for the first time that you use the deployment share folder, but if this is the second time, and this is actually the second time, we will use the first option, optimize the boot image updating process. So now it will begin updating the boot images for the 64-bit system and the 68-bit system, and after updating the boot images we need to go and change them in the Microsoft Deployment Services. We have done this in the previous video. As I said before, here the Windows Deployment Services will tell the workstation to boot or to use this boot image system to go and begin the deployment process. For example, as you can see here in the video, here the client will go and talk to the Windows Deployment Services, and then it will initiate the system, a live system, which is called boot image system. Okay, so this boot image system, it is in the deployment share boot, okay, in the deployment share. Okay, so every change done in the deployment share, you need to go in the deployment Windows Deployment Services and change this boot image, okay, because there has been some changes. For example, if you have done some configuration or something in this will be affecting the boot image, okay, and this boot image is used by the client to communicate with the Microsoft Deployment Share. So if there is any changes done in the boot image, and actually this has been done as we have seen, we need to go to the Windows Deployment Services and attach the deployment image again after the changes has been made. Okay, so we'll see that in a moment. Here we'll right click and we'll tell him add boot image, replace image, touch, okay, and then okay, next, next, next. So every change done in the deployment share will affect the boot image, and this boot image need to be replaced in the Windows Deployment Services as we are doing now. Okay, I think it will take a little bit of time, so we need to be more quick. Okay, okay, we have done, no, just a minute. No, I can again. Okay, just a minute. I think it's paused, maybe. No, it's playing. So now we have already replaced, we have done this for the 64-bit. We can do this also for the 86-bit, and then we'll tell him to restart the Windows Deployment Services. But actually don't need to update the light touch 68 or 86-bit because we only use the 64-bit, and then we restart the services of the Windows Deployment Services just to make a refresh. Okay, so it will accept the new boot image changes. Okay, I think I don't need all of this because I will not make any change. Okay, is all of this not needed anymore? I have shut down the... Okay, so not what I will do now, just go for a moment. I will shut down the second domain controller, and then I will attach to it SQL 2016. Okay, let me show you in the graph. We have a database that will contain all of the workstations, the 53 PCs, their names and their correspondent network adapter MAC addresses. Okay, so why is this? Because as soon as this workstation will communicate with the Microsoft Deployment Share, it will ask, or it will be giving a name according to it to its network adapter MAC address. Okay, so this will facilitate me, so I don't need during the process of the installation to put the name for the PC. Okay, it will be taken from a database. Okay, this is SQL 2016 database. So we need to install SQL 2016, and then we will connect it to the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, and then we will begin importing in it the workstation, the 53 names for the PCs and their correspondent network adapter MAC addresses. Okay, so we need to now install the SQL 2016 software. Okay, so now we can go and begin installation. Okay, we'll go and put the Windows Server of SQL 2016. Okay, this is, I have SQL Standard Edition. Apply and OK. And then I will start the second domain controller. I think we can buy this process very quickly. Now we will log in, and then we will begin installation of the SQL 2016. So now tell him new SQL standalone installation, and after installing the SQL we will install the SQL management console. This console we will use to configure the database, or to communicate and change the database through using this SQL management console. Here we will accept the license agreement, and then he will tell us to accept the agreement, and then he will run some rules or some pre-checks to see if my server is ready or have the minimum requirement to install the SQL. Here he is trying to update the SQL, but he doesn't find internet, the SQL software I mean, and then he will begin giving some warnings. He will begin to see if you have the minimum requirements to install SQL 2016, and there is any obstacles for installing it. For example, here we can see that, just a minute, here you can see that it's telling you that it's a domain controller, and it's saying that it's not recommended to put a SQL 2016 on a domain controller, and this is something related to Microsoft.NET application security. Anyway, we will install it on a domain controller, but if you have a server member and you can install on it a SQL 2016, and in the same time you can install on it the Windows deployment services and the Microsoft deployment toolkit and the and the assessment deployment kit, so that's it, you can do it. But actually I have only I need to install them on the second domain controller. Okay, so I will install them all on the same server, and it's also a best practice to install the Microsoft deployment services and the Microsoft deployment toolkit and the assessment deployment kit on a server that doesn't contain the DHCP on it. Okay, so anyway, and also that does not contain DHCP on it, and will not to be a domain controller, because the SQL database that we will use, it's not recommending us to have SQL 2016 installed on a domain controller. Anyway, we will continue. And here we will choose some things to be installed. I need to be very quickly because it took me a lot of time until I got it. Just a minute. Here we can see that you will have just a minute. As I see here, we will have, just a minute, we will have these. We will have SQL Server replication, and we'll have full text and semantic extractions for search, and we'll have reporting services native. Okay, and then we'll have the following. We will have SQL Server data tools, documentation components, management tools basic, SQL client connectivity SDK. We will not find local DB, we will not find this. So these are all the features that we need to install on the SQL 2016. Okay, so we will continue. Anyway, we can see that we have SQL client and documentation components. We have SQL client connectivity, documentation components, clients tools connectivity. Okay, and data quality. Okay, and so we have SQL connectivity, documentation, client tools connectivity, data. You can go there. Okay, so we have SQL client connectivity, document components, client tools connectivity, data quality client, and then we will have reporting services native. We will choose it. We will have reporting services native, and we have full text and semantic extraction and SQL Server application. This is that we will install. Okay, reporting services. You can also choose tools SDK. I think we can choose this also. Anyway, I think we need to pause it real quickly. So we'll have tools. I think we'll have client tools SDK. Anyway, we will not do it, and then we will change. I will change the directory from the C to the D, and because I don't have much space on C. Okay. So now it is telling me, okay, the default database, it will be giving a name. Okay, MS SQL Server. Okay, this is the default database name. It will be MS SQL Server. Okay, this is the first instant, or this is the default SQL database name, MS SQL Server. Okay, instant ID. Okay, this is the default instant. Specify the name instant for instance server will become a part of the installation path. Okay, this will be the name of the first database, or I think this, yes, this will be the first database name on the SQL 2016. And then it will ask you, this is this is a couple of services that need to be running so the SQL 2016 can work correctly. This is the SQL Server Agent Service, the SQL Server Database Engine Service, the SQL Server Reporting Services, SQL Full Text whatsoever, and SQL Server Browser. All of these services should be up and running. So if any problem happens for the SQL 2016 database or the SQL 2016 software, we need to open services in Windows and check these services. Okay, so he's telling him, okay, I will give it, this is the service and this is the accounts or the Windows accounts that will run these services. Okay, so I will leave everything as default, and actually I will make it automatic, not manual. And this user accounts will not have password, or they will not have password, and they are will run automatically. Okay, in another installation I have already created an Active Directory user account and give it a password, and then use this Active Directory account to run all of these services, okay, and tell also automatic. I prefer this solution, but in this lab I will leave everything for the default. So all of these services will work with Windows built-in user accounts, and they don't have password, and they will all run automatically. Next, and then this is another thing. He's telling you if you need to access the database, how you can access it. You can access it using Active Directory user account, or you can use the default SQL 2016 username. When you install SQL 2016 for the first time, it has a default username which is called SA. This SA, you can give it a password because it's by default, it's not given, the username doesn't have a password, so you put a strong password. If you want to access the SQL database, you can access it using the local administrator, which is SA for the SQL database, or you can use your Active Directory user account. Here I will use, or I will give the DC_IT, which is the Active Directory security group for the IT. I will give all of them the access to the SQL database, and I will also configure the SQL 2016 local administrator username SA and give it a password. So here it's telling us if you want to use Active Directory only or Windows Authentication only, or mixed mode, you can use Windows Authentication or Active Directory users and the local SQL administrator username. We can do this. Okay, so we can use SQL Authentication and Windows Authentication. Okay, and also when you are on the SQL database, you can use the local administrator username, which is SA, and also you can create in the SQL database itself, you can create users, okay, but will be inside the SQL software, okay, not inside the Windows, okay. Anyway, you tell him mixed mode. We will use SQL Server Authentication and Windows Authentication. And here we will use the SA password, SA username. Here this is the password that I will give it. Make sure that the password is complex, it's more than 7 characters and contains numbers and special characters and uppercase and lowercase. This is a recommendation by Microsoft. And then I add my user, my current user, and then I add the group of the IT. I will add the group of, or the Active Directory security group that contains all of the IT Active Directory users. Here you go. This is the DC is abbreviation for DC Comics and IT for Information Technology. Next, and then we will begin. This is the reporting for SQL. I will tell him install only. I will not configure reporting services for the SQL. And then this is a summary for what we are doing, and then we will leave it for installation. Okay, I think it will take a little bit of time. We can pause it. Okay, here you go, and just a minute. Okay, and here I'm just go and put a password for the Microsoft deployment Active Directory user account. I will give it the same password as the SQL database password, or the SQL SA account. I think what I am doing now, I think I will copy some maybe some scripts or something. Okay, this is the source of the SQL Management Studio. This is a software that we will use to access the SQL 2016 database, because you can access the SQL 2016 database by two ways, through graphical interface or through command prompt. So we will access the SQL 2016 database using the graphical interface by using the program that is named SQL Management Studio. This also should be downloaded separately. It will not be contained in the SQL 2016 DVD. So you need to download the SQL Management Studio. It's for free. SQL Management Studio tool, you can download it for free, and then we'll begin installing it after the finish of the installation of SQL 2016 software, or after finish of the installation of the SQL 2016 database. So now we will go and install the SQL Management Studio. And actually, after you install the SQL Management Studio, you need to restart the server. This is done after the installation of the SQL Management Studio. Okay, it will ask you for a restart. Anyway, there is a problem. I have encountered the problem. I think I have end task or something, but anyway, we need to get like this. Okay, let's go here. Okay, the SQL 2016 is installed successfully, the database, and then we will install the SQL Management Studio. First of all, we will eject the DVD, and then we'll go and install the SQL Management Studio. Anyway, this is SQL Server. Okay, this is for the SQL. We don't need this. Is for the SQL SQL Studio. So now we'll begin the installation of the SQL Management Studio. It will take a little bit of time. It will take some time. I need to pass it through. Okay, I think I will pass it. So, as I said before, you need to regularly take checkpoints for your virtual machine. So this will be as a backup plan for you for for if any reason the virtual machine have any problems with the Windows or something with the configuration or something in the operating system is not correct or faulty or corrupted, you can return to a previous point by using the checkpoints. Okay, it is before SQL. This is, I have a checkpoint before Microsoft, or before install a Microsoft deployment toolkit, and I have another checkpoint before installing the SQL database. Just preparing myself if there is any problem that happens with my SQL installation, I can return back anytime. So now we will restart. We need a restart. So now we will see, or we will try our SQL Management Studio and see if it will work or not. We will see that there is a couple of problems that will appear and how we can solve them. This is also, I think, in a virtual environment, but these problems doesn't happen in a regular environment or in a production environment. Okay, I was trying to see what is a virtual SAN manager. Okay, but I didn't succeed, or I didn't know what it was for. You need to have a SAN, or you need to have fiber cables installed on your laptop, but I don't have it, so it's not we will not be able to use it. So now I think we can pass it real quickly. Can go here. We will open the SQL Management Studio. Here it's SQL Server 2000, SQL Server 17, and then SQL Management Studio. This is the password for the SA. I will use the SA account, or the SQL local administrator, which is SA. I will not use my Active Directory user account, just to try and see if it will work. Here we can see that when I try to connect, say that there is a connection or network error. So as I said before, you need to make sure that the 5 services that we have been talking about before in the services in the Windows, that they are up and running. So we'll go to our console that contain the services console for the Windows, and we'll see if we have the 5 SQL services up and running. We can pass it real quickly here. Okay, pass it there. Okay, here we go to the services. Okay, can go a little bit further also. Okay, here we see that there is 1 2 3 4 5, about 5 services. The main important one of them is the MS SQL Server service. It was not running, so we need to make it start. It should start automatically. Okay, so now we'll have the SQL Server up and running services, and one for the SQL agent. So when we go and when we try to connect now with the SA account, SQL Server authentication, we can see that we were able to connect. Here you can see that we can connect and see our database. So the last thing that we'll do in this lab is to add the SQL server console here with our custom consoles, so we can monitor our SQL services from here. Okay, so we'll see this. If you can have a moment, I will show you how this is done. There is something called SQL server configuration. If you edit it, you can see from this SQL server configuration or configurator or configuration manager, you can see all of the services of the SQL server. You can monitor them from it. For example, if you open it, you can see that in the SQL servers here, you can see that this is all of the services, the one that we will try, or the one that we had started them up manually. We can start them from here, so we can monitor all of this from here. This is the SQL Server network configuration, the clients, everything we can see concerning our SQL Server can be viewed from here. So in the upcoming videos we will continue configuring our task list, or the task for installing Windows 10 LTSC 2019. We have begun our first step in the configuration of this task is to make a script to partition the hard disk for the workstation that we will have Windows 10 installed on it. And we have told this script to make two partitions, two primary partitions. The first one will be 50% of the hard disk, and the second one will be the remaining 50%, and this will be called C and D. The first will be for the Windows, and the other will be it will named Windows, and the second will be named D, and it will be named data. And they will be partitioned, be formatted as NTFS. And this for the two operating systems, or the two systems that use, if one use EFI boot system, or the other if it used BIOS boot system or MBR boot system. Here, we can pass it real quickly because I don't see that there is something. Anyway, so in the upcoming video we'll complete our configuration of the task. Here we can see that this is the final result. We have our task. This is a task that we have been working on this video. It's called Win LTSC 2019. This is the first task, and this task that we will use to deploy Windows 10. Okay, Windows 10 LTSC 2019, and we have begun configuring our first script to automate the Windows installation by telling him to make two partitions C and D for EFI and boot systems for new computers. Okay, this will not apply if the computer has already a system installed on it, or the hard disk is already partitioned. Okay, so this is the first step. In the upcoming videos we will begin configuring more options. So at the end we will have a PC joined the domain and giving a name, and Windows operating system installed with all necessary programs. And in this lab we have already installed the SQL 2016 database. In this database we will put all of the PC or the 53 PC names and their correspondent network card adapter MAC addresses. Why we are using our their MAC addresses or network adapter MAC addresses? Because this is a unique number that is not repeated in anywhere in the world. So through this number we can identify which PC will be giving which name. Okay, so until I see all the upcoming video, I hope this video was informative for you all, and I would like you all to thank you for viewing. Thank you.